Welcome to the CEO Project Podcast, where Jim Schlexer, author of the best-selling book, Great CEOs Are Lazy, and the founder of the CEO Project, provides ideas and tools to help CEOs of mid to large-sized companies grow and optimize their businesses. Now, let's get started with the show. Welcome, everybody, to the CEO Project Podcast. My name is Jim Schlexer. I'm your host and the founder of the CEO Project. Well, marketing is an area that a lot of CEOs struggle with. I mean, like either unless you came up it and you know it, you don't really know what you're doing. And frankly, people that are of an age of being CEOs in many cases didn't grow up fully digitally, which is, newsflash, where it's all at right now. And actually, as an engineer, as I've learned more about it, I love digital because of the quantitative nature of it, the ability to measure it. Because it used to be we put marketing into the ethos and hope to heck something came back. And now you can be very clear about that worked, that didn't work, this is better than that, and so forth. But today we've got an expert that's going to really help us understand this. Erik Huberman is the founder of Hawke Media, a marketing consultancy refining how businesses launch, scale, and thrive with tailored, data-driven, I love the data thing, performance-focused strategies. He has worked with some of the biggest names around: Red Bull, Verizon, Casamigos, Funko, which I've actually never heard of, probably telling you how old I am, Crocs. Before founding Hawke Media, Erik grew a couple of successful e-commerce companies at a ripe old age of 26. He's also the author of the best-selling book, The Hawke Method. We're going to talk about that today for sure. And with an unwavering commitment to pushing boundaries, Erik continues to lead with vision, purpose, inspiring businesses and entrepreneurs to achieve their greatest potential. Did your mom write that for you?
I don't know. I've never heard that introduction before, but it sounds like it.
Oh my God. And he's such a sweet boy and he needs a lovely young lady. I don't know.
We're good there, but yeah.
We're good there. Okay,
really
good.
funny.
Well, welcome, Erik. Thanks for joining us today. I really
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it. Well, tell us, what makes you a marketing genius?
me. I don't know if I'd be a self-proclaimed marketing genius, but I think, what would I say? There's a combination of things. One, I've been a student of sort of psychology and what makes people tick for a long time, and always just been really curious about what motivates people. And that more manifested in my early career as, the sales side. And like, I always thought sales was such a funny thing because the perception of sales is this pushy Wolf of Wall Street type of selling. And I've always thought, why don't you just present value, show enthusiasm, and the person's going to buy or not? And so had a different view of that, which does sales to me is the one-on-one version of marketing. Marketing selling to masses. And so I'd say that. And then what I think really drives sort of the exception and why we've been able to be great is curiosity. And you actually nailed, I'm more of an analytical guy. So when you said the engineering approach to marketing, like I would say that is where I fall too. I'm actually not the most visually aesthetic, genius in that sense, but I'm always curious about like, okay, well, that happened. Why? Well, that drives that, and that's that. And that person probably reacted to that way. And it's like asking a lot of questions and trying to get to the answer of like, why is this happening this way, good or bad? Has always been something that really helped us be excellent at marketing because we never took anything for granted. We just never said, oh, you just put it out there and it's what happened. It was always, why did that happen? How do we make it happen again? How do we make sure that doesn't happen again? And those kind of things that really drove us.
That's the thing I like about quantitative, though. I actually don't care.
Yeah.
If purple pulls better than blue, we're doing purple. If the turtles are better than the line, then we're doing turtles.
So,
but within the scope of brand appropriate, right? I mean, I'm not going to get crazy.
And I agree with you.
People go, this is better than that. I'm like, I don't know. Let the data tell me which one's better. I'm not smart enough to know.
But here's where I would differ there is I do care why. The answer is the answer. The result is the result. If purple's better than blue, great. We're going with purple. But why is purple better than blue? And that's where I think it's that extra step that makes you a great marketer or not, which, by the way, you're not claiming to be a marketer. But for me, I want to know why people would click a purple button instead of a blue one. And what is it about purple? And like, that's the stuff that really...
Can you really get at that though?
Not always, but the questions drive in the right direction. Like, at least you can start to make some assumptions that then you test on the next test. And if it works out the same, you go, okay, so I was right there. So it's the thought of wanting to know, which, by the way, CEOs shouldn't want to know. Like CEOs, that's a waste of your time.
No, I want a guy like you who knows.
Yeah,
I really don't care, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about the three core principles of marketing to drive growth, and I thought that would be really interesting to understand and talk about. So when you frame, how do we grow a business using marketing? What are those three principles that CEOs should be? Again, we don't need to know all the details. We just need to know the right questions to ask, right? So what are those three?
When that comes from our book, The Hawke Method. And that was the
Yeah.
purpose. Is I want anyone that like this isn't supposed to be rocket science. These are the basics. If you understand this, you can at least manage a marketing team. And that's where that came from. So it's awareness, nurturing, and trust are the three pillars of marketing.
Awareness, nurturing, trust. Okay.
Yep.
Run me through
And
how we do each of those
yep.
things.
So awareness is how do you introduce your product or service to new potential customers? How do you let people know
Got it.
you exist? So that's what most people think of as marketing. It's advertising, it's PR, it's word of mouth, it's all the things that get your name out there. And obviously you can go into a lot of detail on how that all works, but for the sake of brevity, that is the part that again, creates top of the funnel, allows you to grow. You're always going to be losing customers by
Yeah.
nature. People are moving, changing their minds, changing their habits, dying, whatever it is. Like, sorry to say, it's just the fact of life that like your customers will not be there forever. And so you have to find new ones.
I want to see a marketing pitch where they go, number one cause of customer loss, death.
Yeah. Which, by the way,
maybe a nursing home.
nursing
right?
homes. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. It's the most relevant. But and so then nurturing the part. This is probably the thing people miss the most is the idea of a consideration or purchase cycle. Which is when I say that, everyone knows what I'm talking about. It's like, yeah, it takes time from when someone learns about you to when they buy. But when they look at their marketing metrics, they're like, well, I spent 10 grand today. I didn't make 10 grand. Where's my returns? Like, that's not how people behave. And so understanding that there's a period between when you introduce them and create awareness to when they actually purchase, and then doing things intentionally, doing that during that period to increase the conversion, to shorten that period, things like email marketing and SMS marketing, creating great content. So you're really engaging people during that process and building that is the most critical part of all of this. And frankly, the least expensive. So it's really important to build that. That's the nurturing piece. And then nurturing also, I'd say, goes to post-purchase, getting them to come back, keeping those customers, keeping in touch with them. The last piece, trust, is also known as brand. But basically, when you don't have a brand yet, people don't know if they can trust you. So how do you build that trust? It's third-party validation. So it's testimonials, reviews, influencer marketing, sponsorships, all these, good content, PR, all these things that allow third parties to lend their trust to you. And then over time, what you deliver consistently becomes your brand, becomes your trust. And, I don't need anyone else to tell me what McDonald's is. I don't need to read a review unless they're trying to change their brand, which that's a whole different conversation. But, and to think about this, like trust is good and bad, meaning I can trust you to do bad things too. I can trust my cable TV provider to be an awful customer service experience. I can trust McDonald's to be really bad for my health, but taste consistently everywhere in the world. Like, or it can be good things like Zappos and, the idea that they double down on customer service, that I should have customer service. And what's one little fascinating nugget about trust and building your brand is it's what you do consistently, but it's also what you talk about. And Zappos is the best example of that in terms of like they wrote a book called Delivering Happiness about customer service. So we all think of Zappos as great customer service. So what becomes really interesting in that world is I mentioned cable providers being bad customer service because everyone seems to agree that they are. So what happens is if I call my TV provider and I have a good experience on customer service, I go, oh, I guess there's one exception there. And if I call Zappos and have a bad experience, I go, oh, I guess there's one exception there. Confirmation bias becomes a really powerful thing when it comes to brand, because if you build a good brand in a positive brand and people like you, when there are mix-ups, they give you the benefit of the doubt. And vice versa, if you build a brand that people don't like and you are desperately trying to serve them, they're looking for every reason why to hate you.
Yeah, interesting. It's funny you talk about talking. I remember one of the articles I wrote is the thing you talk about the most is your strategy. I worked for one company. Every time we got together, I ran a big division for them. Every time we got together for a 2-day strategy meeting, the first half a day, we got to make the numbers in the quarter. We got to make the numbers. Where's that order? Blah, blah, blah. And I finally said, hey, guys, it was all guys at that time, said, you want to know what our strategy is? Make the numbers. That's the strategy, because it's what we talk about all the time. Like everything else is secondary to make the numbers, which was really kind of depressing once I figured that out. But yes, what we talk about is your strategy.
A lot of companies fall into that. That is not atypical. It's an issue. By the way, numbers are important, but you definitely there should be a conversation before the numbers.
One would hope, because it's really an outcome, not a driver, as it turns out.
Yeah.
A lot of our clients are moving to a different model on marketing from the historic sort of, I would call it push marketing to hand raiser marketing. So very much along the lines of what you talked about, awareness, nurture. And in the nurture cycle, they create opportunities for hand raising. And they go, once somebody raises their hand, they know who we are. They like us enough to raise their hand. They need the product right now. So that moment of need thing that you talked about, is there. And it really came from a genius marketer, guy who helped found OxyClean, David Appel.
Mhm.
And I was talking to him one day and he goes, Jim, why would you talk to anybody who doesn't want to talk to you?
I
I'm like,
totally agree.
man, that's a damn good question,
Yeah.
right? And so help me, like, how do we do that? How do we, and even more, how do we have the patience to wait
Yeah.
for that to work? Because that's a slow burn, right? Depending on the purchase cycle.
Well, there's both. So I would say you still need like the awareness piece still needs to be the awareness piece, meaning
Yep.
like you want as many people
Got
uh,
that.
in that window as possible, so
Yep.
that when you are going for hand raisers, the pool that you're reaching into is massive. That's how I
Right.
would say you do that the right way. Is you because even with here, like I constantly tell my team, like you don't want to be convincing anyone they need marketing. That is not our
Right.
job. You just want to show them that we're the best partner to do that, and that's where we sit. And so for us we know that like you might need us now, you might need us 10 years from now, and in 4 jobs from now. And that's something we've been around 11 years. We've seen that where it's like, oh, I've talked to you for a decade and now you want to hire us? Like, that's crazy, but that's awesome. And
Yeah.
we know that's literally how the world works. So instead of trying to force it, we just put ourselves out there. And so for any brand, this is where we are actually leaning in pretty heavy right now with the 600 brands we manage on the idea of being their own media company, where it's
Yeah.
like you should be creating content and media that serves the same problem that your company solves. And when I say problem, like it could be as simple as a sock company that like I want comfortable socks. Like so you're talking comfort becomes a solution. And so now you're going to talk about a lot of things that have to do with comfort, the best,
Hmm.
blankets, how to have a sleepover, whatever it is, things that attract people that keep that sort of emotional reaction to your brand in line. And you become the destination for that solution to
Right.
that audience so that when they're ready, they can't think of anything but you. And that's where I think it's becoming really powerful on the media side to like be that, serve
Hmm.
that niche in a very powerful way and be that solution to your customers. Again, from a
Interesting.
content standpoint as well as a product standpoint.
Got it. Now, does that riff over to B2B? Because obviously a lot of people listen to this podcast are not B2C, and
Yep.
you're kind of giving a B2C answer there. Does that also work B2B? Let's say I make, I don't know, industrial valves
Yep.
or, over the road work trucks like water
Yep.
trucks and oilers and
Yeah.
sweepers. And like, how does it, like, that's not a B2C purchase, right?
Yeah. So
So,
and listen, there are differences between B2B and B2C marketing, but in general, they're very similar because at the end of the day, you're still selling to a person. And that person still is buying, people are still driven by emotion and they
yep.
justify it with logic. And I think, listen, business decisions and B2B decisions are a little more logic driven, but there's still an emotion behind it. There's still
Hmm.
I have to hit my numbers for the quarter or whatever
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that's driving them. And so you have to understand, like in Hawke Media, we drink our own punch. We pretty much do every marketing service we provide, we do for ourselves.
Mhm.
And it's, we run Facebook ads and Instagram ads and Google ads and TikTok, and we generate a ton of business from those as a B2B business serving, the lower and middle market marketing.
Right.
So that, yes, the answer is most companies can take a similar approach. When it comes to B2B and creating content, actually, I think it's even more powerful because people are trying to educate them on the space. This is their career. So they're going to
Yep.
take a lot more time to be like, how do I do this? And if you can be the company that's go to give them guidance in their own business and the things that you're solving, yeah, that's huge.
Right.
So I think it applies even more so for B2B than B2C.
Got it. Interesting. Hmm. So where do you see people going wrong on this? So let's say, we're trying to do marketing. I got it. Make up, top of the funnel, the
Yep.
world, the people I'm interested, those that know about me, nurture, purchase, repurchase, like run them through the funnel. You help with marketing support. Where do people go off the tracks? Where do they go? Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a giant mistake. Like
Yeah. A
that
couple
we
things.
all make. And give me two or three that we all make because I'd be really
Yeah.
informative, I think.
Yeah, the number one is that sales cycle. It's just looking at your marketing as if everything's going to perform tomorrow and then cutting
Right.
things off because it don't. That's
Right.
number one.
Because
Like,
and we're not selling Coca-Cola. They don't need it every day or every other day or every third day or whatever it is.
right,
It's
exactly.
okay. Okay.
And so manage it that way. And then number two, and so it's all kind of in the same pool. The
Okay.
second one is misreading the data to make decisions and taking the data as gospel versus understanding it's an indicator. The example I'll give here is, the iOS 14 is a really well-known marketing change where Apple changed their tracking ability for mostly for Facebook.
Yep.
Before that, it was in April of 21. Before that, you could track a 28-day window on Facebook, meaning if someone clicked your ad, you could see for 28 days what behaviors they had. That dropped to 7 days and not even that accurate once that
Yep.
changed. This is what's baffling to me. We are now 4 years later, and still 99% of marketers don't and CEOs don't understand the difference of a 28-day window and a 7-day window and how much that would hurt the perceived performance. Because if I'm tracking all the people that purchase over the next 7 days, of course it's going to be less than 28 days. And people are still talking about trying to get back to their 2021
Yeah.
numbers. And what's funny about that is that was the change, which didn't change consumer behavior whatsoever on Facebook or Instagram. So it still works just as good as it did. Slight differences because you can't do as much retargeting because of
Yeah.
the lack of tracking.
Yeah.
Like very similar consumer behavior, very similar returns. There's other things that have gotten a little more expensive, but like in a nutshell, it's still a great channel, but you just can't track it as well. So what we see people doing is going and Facebook is reporting, let's say a 1x ROI, ROAS, as people say, return on ad spend, which doesn't make any sense if you have any cost of goods. You're spending the money and making like doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But if you take a step back and go, no, that's 1x in the first week, and then
Yeah.
everyone else that purchases after that is all profit, like
Mm-hmm.
depending on your gross margin, like that becomes a much more compelling thing. And so we see a lot of people turn these things off or pull back on them or don't step into them because they're looking at the wrong data. And that becomes a problem on that piece. It's a lot of parts of their business that we see this happen. The other one, which is we actually invested in a company called Pentane to try to help solve this, that does sort of financial marketing diligence and creates a command center for it. People not understanding contribution margin and going, my costs are too high, so cut all my ad spend. And it's like, but that's going to bring down your revenue, and then
Yeah.
your fixed costs are still going to be too high. And just these are all sound like basic things, but when you're dealing with small and medium businesses, this is the stuff you are running
I
into.
understand it. Interesting. It'd be wild. And there probably is a model that says if week one looks like this, here's the tail over the next 8 weeks. 50% lower every week for the next 8 weeks, and you can model that right out. And so if you don't like just model it out for 8 weeks with that declining number, you're in great shape, right?
Well, this is where I say take a step back because you can see the revenue being generated. Like my favorite thing is we've had companies that, their Facebook return, Facebook says they're making 100 grand, a week off of Facebook. And they're like, let's say they're spending 100 grand. So it's like,
Yep.
well, that doesn't make sense. And it's like, but their business is making $6 million a month. And so it's like, yeah, I get it. You're spending 400 grand and Facebook's telling you you're only making 400 grand a month, but you're making $6 million. What else are you doing? Oh, we think that, we had a good PR hit in GQ. I promise you that PR piece did not drive $6 million. So it sucks because it is art and science, but there's an art part of this too, that you have to like take a step back and think of it holistically and go, how does this make sense? And that's where the curiosity thing comes in. It's like, okay, if we're only spending on Facebook and we had one, news article come out, that news article maybe helped a little bit, but let's be real. These are all coming from Facebook. So even though Facebook's telling me it's 400 grand, we know it's probably at least 4 million, if not more. And so let's double down on that. Even though the number on the spreadsheet doesn't say that, we know that's working. And you have to be that savvy.
Yeah, interesting. What about riffing this over to LinkedIn? Because a lot of B2B companies use that as their primary platform over LinkedIn. Facebook's more B2C, LinkedIn would be more B2B. What's
about that? Not
okay?
true.
Fix me. I love it.
LinkedIn as a content platform in a one-to-one like connect with people, it's great. The networking app, et cetera. I use LinkedIn all the time. For advertising, it's such an unstable platform. They constantly change the pricing, they change the targeting. They haven't figured out how to make their ads work. It's not a good ad platform. And again, everyone you want to talk to, not everyone, but I'm speaking in hyperbole, but almost everybody that you want to talk to, if they're on LinkedIn, they're on Facebook. Like, let's just be real. And they're on Instagram.
I thought they had to be over 45 to be on Facebook.
Potentially, but those are the but yeah, the end of the day, like, and again, that's actually a whole different topic of like, most millennials are using Instagram, Gen Z is using TikTok. In a general statement, there's still probably, I don't know, 200 million Gen Z on Instagram. Like when we say these things, you got to be careful of these headline statements because the truth is there's plenty of targeting any demographic on. There's plenty of boomers on TikTok and there's plenty of millennials on TikTok. Like everyone's everywhere. There's plenty of pools to target on those. And again, we see better B2B performance on Instagram and Facebook than we see on any other channel. Wow. Because those people, what's happening is if you get your messaging right, you're hitting people at a time when they're basically telling you they're bored. They're not doing anything. They might be on LinkedIn to actually go message someone. So your ad's just getting in the way. On Facebook and Instagram, they're just scrolling through their newsfeed. They're still the same executive that needs to make a decision on this thing. And if you catch them at a time when they have some free time, they've maybe gone to the bathroom, end of the day of work, they're sitting in bed, and oh, this is a solution for something I need at work. They're going to tag that and be like, I need to check this out. And they might not get into it deep that day, This is where nurturing comes in. Try to
Yeah.
collect their email right away, try to retarget them, all those things. But they're going to show interest. And so the ability to market there, you're better off as a B2B business right now marketing on Meta than you are LinkedIn. Google's great too. And the difference between Facebook and Google or Meta and Google, Google's a place to answer existing demand. I need this, who has it? And you can be the one that raises your hand. Meta is a place to create new demand. People that don't even know you're a solution that exists, you can be like, hey, we do this thing. You didn't even know you had the option to solve this. We're now here for you. And
Got
so
it.
that's the way to think about it is your that real top of the funnel is Meta. And then that like existing demand that people know they need to solve their problem, you can be that solution to.
Interesting. Well, that's really fascinating because that's not something I've heard before. That's great. A lot of people talk about, you said like we met them and then 10 years later they came back. I used to say we're a great second date, go date somebody else. We're a great second date. But what it really boils down to is incident. Something happened that
Mhm.
caused them to change their thinking about the current provider.
Yep.
And I've got people we work with that go, boy, if I could know when somebody's a new CEO or when they missed a quarter or when they had a safety incident or when they
Yep.
boom, like that's when we win clients because that's when we get the phone calls. Is there a way to think about like what event occurred because that event drives demand for me and then market to it somehow? Or am I being way too
If
out
you
there?
can, it depends on the event. Like,
Yeah.
we work on both B2B and B2C clients. Like, we have a lot of baby products, and like you can find out when people are having a baby on these.
Yeah, that data is available, or new house
Right.
buyers, or there's
Right.
stuff that's available.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
get
if
that.
it's available and if it's targetable, then totally. But you also don't want to bang your head against it. Like for us, knowing that they fired their agency, really tough. That's not really
Yeah,
publicly available information. So that's where the pull comes in that we were talking about, where it's like we're just going to be out there and they're not going to forget us. That's
yep,
kind of how I look at it. Is like a friend of mine wrote a book called Top of Mind that I really like, a guy named John Hall, and just stay top of mind and like commit yourself to their long-term memory that when they think about for us, when they think about marketing, we're your outsourced CMO. We make it really easy. That's what we do. We're your outsourced CMO. That's our tagline. When someone's like, God, I need marketing help for whatever pain point they're having,
yep.
we're in their mind. And
So you don't market to the pain points. You don't say not happy with your current agency. Call us.
this goes back to kind of my study of human psychology. When you market to pain points, you emotionally associate yourself with those pain points.
Ah,
And so
interesting.
people will disagree with me. Fear is a motivator. People like to market to fear. And so I
Yep.
know that it works. I have just go back to like the brand and the ethos that we want, and it's worked for us. Like I get the feedback, I hear, the reputation we've created, and it's like we've never gone into the ugly side of like you're getting screwed, you're getting this. We've talked about it at times, but at the end of the day, we would rather just be like, we're great because you know your pain points. You're feeling them. If we just create the light at the end of the tunnel, you'll come to us, and that's that pull versus like they suck, come to us. I feel like that is a great way to yeah, it doesn't work out.
Okay, I hear you. No, I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah.
That's really good feedback because a lot of people do think, FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, doubt. That's what drives change. I'm
Yep.
going to sit there right at the end of that FUD tunnel and pick them all off as they come. So,
My view of it is depending on the industry. In our
yeah,
industry, that fear, uncertainty, and doubt is already there. I don't need to create it. And if it's
yeah,
not there, then I'm not going to create it either. Like I'm not going to convince them that their agency sucks as some other agency. That just seems biased. So
yeah.
if they already feel that way, we had a client that was with us for, I don't know, 6 years, fire us to go to another agency. This is a consequence of our business. People think that there's a shiny object and go, we've been
Yeah.
with you for a long time. We're going to go try something new. They came back 3 months later.
Yeah.
Oops. Like, so, that's something that to my industry, it's a little bit of an annoyance in my industry that you don't deal with as an accounting firm usually or a law firm. It's like, if you're doing the job, you're doing the job with us. We could be crushing it and they still think they need to change to like shake
Yeah.
things up. And that is the dumbest decision-making process, but people do it.
Well, I think law firms and accounting firms have some stickiness that maybe you don't have. Like they've got all their records for the last 5 years. They've done their taxes for the last
That,
four
so that's,
years.
that's the other.
That's a pain in the butt to change.
It is, but we have all that too. It's just the
Oh, well,
perception isn't there. Meaning, like we have all the data, all the marketing, everything that's worked, their pipelines, their seasonality, all that laid out. We've got teams that are dedicated. We have a huge data repository and AI system that we've built. And still, people are like, "We're going to give these two guys a chance to run our Facebook ads," and we're like, "Okay." And you're not going to know that it didn't work for 6 months because that again, back to purchase cycles and how that falls off. But then in 6 months, we'll see you soon.
yeah. And your price will be higher. Sorry about
Yeah,
that. No.
actually. Yeah.
That's great. What about marketing to existing clients? So, one of the things that we work a lot with recurring revenue models, subscription-based models, and
Yeah.
retention is like the magic number, right? But
Yep.
that feels like I can never stop marketing to them somehow. I want to always be in reinforcing my value. How do you help people think about that?
It goes back to that's all, it's an individual business thing. Like, what
Yeah.
are the frequencies of decisions that those people are making, and don't go overdo it. So if like you're selling mattresses and people buy a mattress once every
Well,
10
no,
years.
I'm talking like, I don't know, something a little more frequent than that. Yeah.
No, no, I'm using that as the extreme
Yeah.
example
Okay.
purposely. You're obviously not going to send them an email every month about their new mattress. That's what I mean. If
Yeah.
you're
That would
selling
be just annoying.
Yeah, selling shoes. What do people buy? I don't know what the average person buys shoes. Let's say 6 months. So like maybe don't email them every month, but every few months, be like, hey, here's our new things that are coming out, et cetera. Like that's the frequency you want to be at. It's really about identifying the repurchase rate of your customers, and
Yep.
merchandising is a huge part of this. Like what kind of products are you carrying that, let's say I am selling mattresses. Well, that's a 5 to 10 year purchase cycle. So I should sell sheets, pillows, anything else that I can, sell to those people, and then look at the frequencies of what is the normal behavior of purchasing. Because what you don't want to do is, I've watched that with, bad marketing with products I buy, where they're emailing me weekly
Yeah.
about, I just unsubscribed from this. Oh, I bought a safe, like a home safe.
Yeah.
They emailed me every 3 days to buy another safe. I'm like, guys, what do you think I'm
I'm
turning my house into?
I
Like,
may have bought the last safe of my life. Why
yeah,
are you
exactly. Like,
emailing me?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I unsubscribed from that. And then, honestly, I like the brand, but I was like, nope, don't need that. And
Yeah.
so that it's just about understanding the behavior of your customers and how often you should be in touch. And then also don't just be selling stuff all the time. Just keep them engaged. That's where the content piece comes in. Being a media company too, like that becomes a really powerful tool, because then you may not have to push sales, because those people are going to raise their hand and buy whenever they're ready, and they're going to be engaged with you. You don't have to remind them. They know who you are and they're ready.
It's funny, as you're talking about this, a name comes to mind. There's a restaurant in Memphis makes fabulous barbecue, and I bought some for a friend a
Yeah.
year ago. They must email me 3 times a week. I like, how much barbecue do you really think I eat, right?
Yeah.
So,
When we, with email specifically and SMS, we go into more behavioral triggers now, where it's like you don't email. This whole email blast, blanket email stuff has been dead for like 8 years,
yeah,
but people are still doing it. Where it's like you
yeah,
don't want to do that. You want to, like, your behavior. You bought once a year ago. I may follow up with you more frequently at first, but when I see you're not going to do that, I'm going to now trickle it down a little bit, so that you're getting emails every month or two, that it's not going to inundate you, but you're like, oh yeah, a little reminder, and that will convert at some point. Like you don't want to
yeah.
overdo it with people that aren't going to ever change their
So
behavior.
are newsletters a winning strategy then, or no?
No,
No.
no.
What do you do instead?
My favorite line about email marketing is, don't, if you don't have anything quality to send, don't send anything. So if you like the forced function of a newsletter, I mean, listen, if you're a local venue or something, newsletters can make sense. But if
Sure.
you're like a B2B business, like why do I need your newsletter?
Yeah.
For unless you're creating great content. And like for us, we have a newsletter, but it's benchmarks in the industry, it's updates, it's things that are actually valuable to people on it. And so that's where we leverage it. If you're like, a random consumer brand, selling barbecue, let's say, I don't need
Yeah,
a
right.
barbecue newsletter every month. Like,
Yeah.
if you're going to send me something valuable, something
Yeah.
new, something enticing.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe last question, and this is a bit of a meta question.
Yeah.
Podcasts.
Uh-huh.
Everybody thinks, podcast may be the next answer. Obviously, you're on one right now, so we think there's some level of value in it.
Yep.
What's your view on them as a tool in your marketing kit?
Yeah. So I have a podcast too called Hawk Talk that I've done for 4.5 years. And my podcast is about interviewing like people at the top of their field, like celebrities, athletes. I just yesterday interviewed a Nobel laureate in the immunology side of things. So
Cool.
really, yeah. That to me, that was more of a personal fun. I want to
Yeah.
say hobby, but it's beyond that. But it's been fun. Just I meet so many great people in the job that I do. I wanted to find a conduit. Podcasts in general, there's a few things. One, if you can build a great content arm, like I mean, like the All In podcast or Joe Rogan, like you actually have something
Well,
unique that everyone wants to
yeah.
listen to. Yeah,
Come
that's
on.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
good luck, but that's one. I look at it more as, a couple things. One, if there are conversations I'm already going to have that other people would be interested in, why not create the content? And
Got it.
that's why I did my podcast. That's why I'm on a lot of others, is it's great to meet people, great to get to know them. And why not let other people listen in? People like that. For me, going on other podcasts, it's also great social content. Like
Mhm.
we're sitting here talking for half an hour, and now my team can take this, chop it up, and I can have a 10-second clip on reels of something I said here that, instead I would go have to do a day of recording, da da da.
Yeah.
So social content piece, it's really helpful. I'm now going to reach your audience and build in, and then you gain trust from me, because people that like
Mhm.
me see, because I'll share this, we'll share each other's audiences. So there's a lot of different benefits to it, depending on, but I would say don't go into it because you think you need a podcast. Go in with a clear vision of, this is why I'm doing this. And then
Yep. Okay. Fascinating. Awesome. Erik, this was fascinating. Just, rapid fire, covered
Fun.
the waterfront. It was great. What if people want more of you and your firm in their life? How would they get a hold of you?
So I'm easy. Any social channel @ Erik Huberman. The firm is just hawkemedia.com. And we do free marketing audit and consultation for anyone that needs it. So we're always happy to dive in and take a look. We know we're more long-term approach. So we're happy to build relationships and give some value.
Beautiful. Hawke with an E or Hawke without an E?
Hawke with an E.
Hawke with an E. Awesome.
Yep.
On that note, with an E for Erik. On that note, everybody who joined us today, thank you so much for listening. Hopefully, got a few interesting new ideas, and we'll see you next time on the CEO Project Podcast. Thanks for listening to the CEO Project Podcast. We'll see you next time. Be sure to subscribe to get all the future episodes and check out our website, www.theceoproject.com.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.